Keep your loving brother happy.
Main historical events. Cowboys and their cause. First of all, cowboys in the Western film are the characters who pioneered the West. Nonetheless, cowboys are often associated as flat characters always ready to help a lady in distress. Also, he represents the figure of a hero full of abilities. However, in real life, the job was hard and messy. Indeed, Ben Johnson, an American actor and stuntman, told that at which point the job is painful and lonely. As a matter of fact, the figure of the glamour and romantic cowboy feed the American folklore thanks to novels. Thus, books conveyed that the role of the cowboy is to settle in the West, and the figure became a dream for young men. The fictional cowboy, with boots and gunfight, became a legend. Nevertheless, the figure initiated by the cinema created some confusion between the fiction and the real person. It is more precisely due to the, the exaggeration in films. Cowboy as gunfighter. We all have in mind the picture of the cowboy with a perfect shooter and who fight under the sun at noon, but it's not exactly the truth. Actually, the cowboy as a gunfighter is a stereotype romanticized by the cinema. Cowboys were not professional gunfighters. Professional gunfighters could sell their skills as detectives to have more money, but there is no specific link with cowboys. Indeed, cowboys were pacific, they were not killers contrary to the lawmen. In fact, the gun is a fashion accessory to have a date with a girl. The cowboys have to remove it by politeness and don't use it. However, they prefer use guns and knives to fight rather than their fists in order to reinforce their image. Moreover, cowboys were not dangerous. The real issue was alcohol, because after drinking liquor they were professional shooters. Unfortunately, the fact that cowboys possess guns as for aftermath several accidents like settling of account and cowboys who shoot themselves in the leg. At the beginning, cowboys did not kill people. It was to frightening someone. The confrontation generally ended by a punch in the face and black eye. In Kansas, the primary cause of death was in link with professional quarrel between cowboys, and the issue was generally fixed by a duel at noon. In some circumstances, the gunfight is made of one gun. Also, the fight was unequal. When a cowboy possessed a gun, he had to keep in mind some rules to be safe. For example, ride a horse with a gun can be very dangerous for the rider and the cattle. Sometimes it was necessary to have a gun when the travel could be dangerous because of Indians or cattle rustlers. When the cowboys were in ranch, it's necessary to have a gun to kill dangerous beasts, or shoot dead a cow which is in unpleasant posture. In addition to this, there is a reason to not bear guns. As a matter of fact, laws establish that a man who is guilty to murder another will be hanged from the nearest tree. Law and order. When a human race creates a new civilization, history shows it triggered a period of chaos before establishing a new society. In fact, United States were created with a violent, brutal, and cruel behavior, especially in the settling of the West. Vigilantism has often been associated with the American West, but it actually started way before them. In the 18th century, dueling was a gentle, manly way to fix an issue, and it was seen as a way to defend your honor. However, duel is not recognized by justice. A document called the Code Duello, which had 26 rules, established all aspects of the duel. It explained the circumstance and how many shots you dispose to save your honor. These duels sometimes end in violent conditions with several injuries or the death of someone. Moreover, there are laws against dueling. The majority of people rather ignore. Duels are being outlawed when two founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, had a duel in Weehawken, in New Jersey. After a political defeat, it was capital to Burr to save his honor and consequently establish more honorable to duel than apologize. On the 11th of July, 1804, Alexander Hamilton was shot dead and Burr was acquitted from the murder, but stopped the politics. In the 19th century, dissident governments were created in the United States and used violence. With corruption and trade, citizens dealing the problem themselves, and everybody would shoot everybody in duel. Thus, citizens and politicians ignore the law. The Oxbow Incident is a 1943 American Western film directed by William A. Wellman, which tells a cattle rustling and the murder of a rancher named Kincaid. After the announcement of his death, a group of vigilantes go find out who's the guilty because the sheriff is not in town and unfortunately they kill the wrong person. It questions the fact that in some states, when there's no sheriff, a group of people could serve justice. The film shows that it's not a good idea because serious food could be made.
The Civil War and the American conquest of the West were two of the most important events that changed the United States since 19th century. However, they are often treated and taught separately in history texts and classrooms. This separate categorization is hardly surprising since, in the terms of geography, the majority of Civil War took place in the southern and border states. But it is also odd, given the importance of the West to American politics and identity in the decades leading up to 1861. The expansion of slavery figured prominently in the powers struggling for control over Western territory in the first half of the 19th century, determining the free or slave status of incoming states and federal territorial possessions were central of the Missouri Compromise and Compromise of 1850. The two biggest political bargains that diffused the national-hated slavery debate since the Antebellum period. Persons also witnessed these political struggles produce outright violence. Despite the close relationship between the West and the slavery politics that produced the Civil War, one historian reached the secession critics, which began in the wake of Abraham Lincoln's 1860 election. The West disappears from the main history narrative.
The first transcontinental railroad was constructed between 1863 and 1869 and was 1,912 miles long. It linked the United States from the east to the west. There were two main routes along which the people built the first railroad. One route was called the Central Route. It began in Omaha, Nebraska, and ended up in Sacramento, California. The other route was the Southern Route. This route was stretched across Texas, New Mexico, and ended up in Los Angeles, California. With that, people could travel faster, safer, and cheaper by train. The first transcontinental rail passengers arrived in the Pacific Railroad's original western terminus at the Alameda for transport across the bay to San Francisco. The road's rail terminus was moved 2 months later to the Oakland Long Reef about a mile to the north. Service between San Francisco and Oakland Pier continued to be provided by ferry.
The weight on various engine tracks was constant in warfare during the development of the race. The story of cavalry and the engine was inaccurate. Cowboys and engines, they play a large role in the cinema. This is another aspect of Western. There's another aspect. 19th century, the price of the engine was estimated approximately around 270,000, was 100,000 considering was Australia. Between the end Civil War and 1890, approximately 950 fights took place between the two sides when the peace generally prevailed on the frontier. Between 1865 and 1890, 9,032 soldiers were killed. The army records show that 160.
Jesse Winston James, born September 9, 1847, was an American outlaw, train robber, and leader of the James Younger Gang. Raised in the Little Dixie area of western Missouri, James and his family maintained strong Southern sympathies. He and his brother, James Frank, joined the pro-Confederates known as the Bushwhackers, operating in Missouri and Kansas during the American Civil War. As followers of Bloody Bill Anderson, they were soldiers and civilian abolitionists, including the Centralia Massacre in 1864. After the war, as members of various gangs of outlaws, Jesse and Frank robbed houses, banks, stage houses, and trains across the Midwest, gaining national fame and often popular sympathy despite the brutality of their crimes. The James brothers were most active as members of their own gang from about 1866 until 1876, when, as a result of their attempted robbery in a bank in Northfield, Minnesota, several members of the gang were captured or killed. They continued in crime for several years afterward, recruiting new members, but came under increasing pressure from law enforcement seeking to bring them to justice. On April 3, 1882, Jesse James was shot and killed by Robert Ford, a recruit to the gang who hoped to collect the reward on James's head and promised amnesty for his previous crimes. Already a celebrity in life, James became a legendary figure of the Wild West after his death.
Train robbery is type of robbery in which the goal is to steal money or other valuable being carried aboard trains. They were more common in the past when trains were slower and often occurred in American Old West. Trains carrying payroll shipments were a major target. These shipments would be guarded by expressmen whose duty it was to protect the cargo of the express car. Famous train robbers include Bill Miner, Jesse James, and Butch Cassidy. Jesse James is mistakenly thought to have completed the first successful train robbery in the American West, when on July 12, 1873, the James Younger Gang took $3,000 from a Rock Island Railroad train after drilling it southwest of the Tower of Adair, Iowa. However, the first space-time train robbery in the United States actually occurred on October 6, 1866, when robbers boarded the Ohio and Mississippi train shortly after it left Seymour, Indiana.
Jesse James and I have just seen a movie Henry King made about his life back in 1993. Jesse, do you think that this movie does you justice?
What? No. Here I only
recognize my name. Who came up with this story? It was never my intention to become a movie subject. I'm just an ordinary guy who did what he had to do to survive. It is a bit difficult for us to understand your actions. Can you please explain us what was going on inside your head when you killed Barshi? I was furious. I was just thinking, man, I had to kill that bastard. You need to understand, it was up to me to revenge my family, my home, my whole life. I was concerned to find this man and to cause his family the same pain he caused to me and my brother. Did you regret your actions right away? I never regret any of my actions. If it wasn't for me, he would probably walk away from his action a free man. I couldn't live with myself otherwise. What was life for you in prison like? Pretty boring and hard at the same time. I had to do all sorts of hard work all the time. My back and arms and legs were constantly in pain. I couldn't even sleep at night. I had to have eyes at the back of my head all the time. If it hadn't been for my brother who bailed me out, I'd surely be murdered by an inmate. If you could turn back time, would you do everything the same or would you change some things? At that time, it was the only way to get any justice, so I think I'd probably do it all over again. I would rather such tragedy had never happened to my family, but what can I do?
Hello to all those listening, welcome on Radio Country Live. Today we are with Jesse Michael Woodson James, aka the famous Jesse James. So Jesse, how are you? Hello, I'm fine, thank you. And you? I'm fine too. Today you are here to speak about your career and how you become a myth. First of all, where did you come from? I was from Missouri. I was born there in Kearney, the 5th September 1847, and I died also in Missouri, but more precisely in St. Joseph, the 3rd April 1882. Okay, and what job you were doing at that time? At that time, it was very hard to get out of poverty legally because of all the political problems and the social rejection that I suffered with my family. So how did you success to get out of all this poverty, as you said? First, I started robbing banks with my brother Frank, and it was a real success. I won a lot of money. The police of the time were very vulnerable. They had never been confronted with robberies and hold-up. After I robbed many trains also with Frank, and all those robberies made me famous, and the newspaper of the time only spoke about me. Okay. After your death, you became a myth, a cinematographic hero. Many movies are inspired by your story, like Jesse James, I Shot Jesse James, or Alias Jesse James by Norman MacLeod. Yeah, it's true. In your opinion, why they chose you to embody the outlaw, the robber? I think that it's because I was the first one to do that. So I was an icon of crime while being idolized by people. But honestly, I didn't expect it because at the end of my life, I had to hide to survive. And when I was killed, I told myself that everyone would forget me or hate me. And are you happy to see that you become a hero for the cinema? Yeah, I'm happy because in a way it makes me immortal. Yeah, it's true. So Jesse, it was nice to meet you. For me too.
aspect of the war between the Indian and the Army were not exactly described in the Hollywood movie. In fact, the soldiers were in the small effective areas. They were supposed to protect theater, miners, ranchers, survivors, and the world road construction crew from the Indian. Moreover, the army had to play a part as the police against the Western bandits and the show. They were not well armed of the battle technique was different from what they were accustomed to. It was too mammoth for them. In 1960, 65 4th and the Rose 10,000 soldiers were protected by the military not far away from the rest. Consequently, the small number of the soldiers could respond to soldier demand of the protection. At the all events illustrated that the army was trained both against Southern troops and the fortification.
American people wanted to kill as many buffalo as they could. Wanted this, to kill Indians by stealing them. Here's the principle of genocide. It's a murder against mankind. To unite the Arctic coast to the Pacific coast because the Indian people tried to resist in order to save their territories and their people. It's a violent movement touched by the American government. In less than centuries, the population of buffaloes was reduced from millions to a few thousand animals.
Presentation of the film Broken Arrow. The film Broken Arrow was released in 1951 in the USA and was produced by Delmer Davis. It was produced during Cold War. It starred James Stewart as Tom J. Philo and Jeff Clonder as counties. India's Could Tom Jefford. Summary of the movie. India's Could Tom Jefford it stand out to spend the war between the whites and Apaches in the late 1870. He learns through an uncomfortably close encounter that the Indians kill only to protect themselves or out of retaliation for white atrocity. Entering the Apaches' territory, seeking peace, Jefford formed a friendship with the Apaches leader.
Mais comment vous m'avez trouvé? Vous êtes vraiment très perspicace. Mais jamais vous allez trouver le corps que j'ai caché dans le bâtiment.
« 99 centimes seulement, déjà disponible sur altaïa.fr.
Good morning, my neighbors! Yes! Yes!
Pew pew! This is a simple lie detector. I'll ask you a few yes or no questions and you just answer truthfully. Do you understand?
Yes.